on the one song,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really kind of thrown together quickly. And if he didn't find it somewhat rewarding to have gone on the whole ride in the first place, he never would have tried to come back around and do that second album.
Right. Now, here's something I'm curious about, because I never know. I don't ever necessarily shy away from interviewing people who are the kids of either celebrities or kids of performers. I've been, and I say kids, the children of. I've been going out of my way, and you're the first where I'm doing this, where I'm wanting to interview the children of people who I had never heard of before, picked up their album, and I'll be honest, my standards are, as long as it's not insanely racist or mean or upsetting, and I get a chuckle out of it, that's enough for me to want to find out more. And what's crazy is we're 18 minutes into it, and I'm so much more fascinated by we're getting into even the more crazy, wonderful things that ended up happening to him career-wise. But I also love that there was this potential for him to maybe become a country songwriter after not. I've had that experience before in art where it just something clicks with you and it's like, I didn't like this before, but all of a sudden, it means something to me. And I'm curious because sometimes people grow up with in families where something like this might have been a disappointment and they never wanted to talk about it again. But it sounds like you know enough of the story that it must have still been a thing that the family talked about. It was just a big part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was 8 years old when in '76 when The White Knight really hit and the album came out, and I was old enough to have vivid memories of it. But yeah, we did continue to talk about it. He's got, I told you I don't know how many albums the album sold, but the single was gold. We've got the gold record hanging on our wall, actually, in our house.
Amazing,
and
amazing.
We have a lot of the memorabilia. I mean, Jason, we had T-shirts with a picture on them.
So good.
There was a little action figure,
oh my God!
Joe, in that jean jacket and jean pants and the Cletus Magritte hat that he's wearing on the front of the kind of fishing hat that he wore on the album, and there was a printed up Stevie Lingo dictionary. We had all this junk forever around the house that was sold. But yeah, I think it surprised him that he fell into it. He kind of whipped this thing out on a lark. It was hugely successful, and then he found something there that he connected with and never really expected to, and made that serious effort at the second album. Of course, the irony is that when he tried his best, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a commentary on his skills at all. Because, like I said, I kind of like the second album. It just, he tapped into popular culture. He came out with this funny song when CB radios were at their zenith. The other popular songs about CB radio, like Convoy and Teddy Bear by Merle Haggard, and those songs were very serious.
Yep.
And, here was one that kind of poked fun at the whole deal, but yet did it in a way that the truckers didn't feel put down at all. They felt like this is a guy who kind of gets it and gets the humor in it. And, it's just one of those crazy things that catches lightning in a bottle. And then when he came back around, there wasn't that same wave of popular culture to ride really with the second album.
Right. God, it's crazy that it was so mercurial, that it was that quick that it could turn on him. It's interesting to me too because there's a big, and there still is, there has been since truckers were a thing, but there's been kind of there's been CB or trucker comedy that you can only get at truck stops basically. And what's interesting though is that like he was at I think, if I'm not mistaken, the beginning of that being a thing, and yet he also hit the pop charts with it too, which is fascinating to me.
And I don't know on that one if that, because the trucker subculture really was kind of a subculture, and I don't know if it crossed over because people just like the humor in the song. This is the 70s, and so you've got Ray Stevens cutting hit records.
Sure.
You've got other people. It was a little, in my recollection anyway, a little more common to be able to cut a comedy hit and chart with it, even on the pop charts.
Right.
So of course, it wasn't just truckers, though, that were using the CB radios. I mean, when it was really at its zenith, people were using those because we had the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and that's what really tripped that, was going down to the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit in whenever that was, 73, 74, to save gas. And that's just too slow. I would say today that's too slow.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to drive 55, and this was a way to do it. Because you notice when you listen to the album, part of the CB culture is about lonely truckers connecting when they got nobody else to talk to. But that's secondary to the idea, which was to beat Old Smoky and make sure that we were able to speed in a way that nobody got caught and got away with it. And for a trucker, of course, that's their livelihood. They got to get that shipment there on time. But just for the regular driver, I do remember us having a CB radio in our little sedan, and same thing, just talking to other people. Where are the cops? Where do I need to slow down? Where can I speed up? And that's kind of what it was all about.
Man, it's so funny that's this weird. It's this interesting Wild West, but everybody had access to it because of this technology that allowed all these people to connect. And something I didn't know about either until I think a couple of years ago and I've got a few now, were the CB business card, or not business cards, but the calling cards that would have where you were on the dial, what your handle was. Those things are great. Yeah, it's a whole culture that is documented fairly well, and then there's stuff like this that's also brings it so into pop culture that it's pretty fascinating. As a result of this album, though, and did you guys move right to Los Angeles? What's the story? How quickly did this kind of stuff happen?
Never moved to Los Angeles.
You never did. Okay.
Moved to Nashville.
Nashville. Okay.
Well, my dad eventually moved to Los Angeles, but that was an entirely different career. That was a career that he was really a lot more proud of, which were the 6 years he spent as a staff writer writing episodes of Magnum PI.
Yeah.
And that's really where he kind of landed, but we can circle back to that.
Sure.
Moved to Nashville in August of 76, left South Carolina. He had signed the record deal. They had signed the deal for the second album. They wanted to get to work on the second album. And there was no reason to stay at the advertising agency that he hated. We actually had some family ties to Nashville anyway, with both my parents being from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. My grandfather had gone to Vanderbilt Law School in the 30s. And so Nashville was a place that was comfortable for us to head to anyway. But, yep, moved to Nashville and settled in, and he made about a 2-year attempt there at really being a serious country recording artist.
Wow, a full 2 years. Okay, so yeah, see, this is some of the stuff that doesn't show up online. It kind of just skips all that. It's like, and then he became a writer for TV.
Right. Yeah, that didn't happen until 1982. So there's some space to fill in there.
Yeah, man.
The 2 years was, I mean, you're right, the second album came out in late 76, but it was almost constant touring, definitely in 76, and then really throughout 77 and even a little bit into early 78. He had his fans, and his little core base, those Baltimore Breakers and those other CB clubs, they didn't go away easily, and it might be a large venue, or it might just be the state fairgrounds somewhere, or it might be some really small concert hall, but he pretty much had a gig to play for about 2 years straight.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Did he, now, was there any, in terms of, like you say, 2 years of trying out being a country songwriter, I mean, did anything hit? Did he sell any songs? What happened during that period?
So on the second album, they released a single called Virgil and the $300 Vacation, which was about this kind of redneck guy who sells his family on the idea of going to Washington, D.C., and the whole thing's only going to cost him $300. He's got it all figured out, and these terrible things happen, and it ends up costing like $10,000. It charted at, I think, number 75 or something, and the writing was starting to be on the wall, but the Cletus Maggard kind of country trucker redneck voice thing was played out.
Sure.
But there's a song on that second album, Two More Sides, called The Torn Flag, which is a serious song about the night Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, because my father was a huge history buff.
Okay.
And a huge fan of Lincoln. And that was released and did reasonably well. But he did sell a song that called My Turn, which was recorded by Anne Murray and then was eventually actually recorded by Reba McEntire.
Wow.
And they both had minor hits with it. It's a slow, serious ballad. It's a love ballad, and he co-wrote it with that guy I had mentioned, Lynn Chariot. He had a little success with that, but it just kind of, he accomplished a lot of things in his life because he was very, very talented, but he was also always kind of on to the next thing if the first thing wasn't just completely successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he did by 79, we had bought a large house in Nashville. He had bought a lot of fancy things. The money was running out, and he went back on the road and actually went back to acting in dinner theaters for a few years, and even was on Broadway.
Wow.
In the summer of '82 in a play called Play Me a Country Song, which was like a truck stop version of the TV show Cheers.
Wow.
And he was the Sam Malone character behind the bar, and that only ran for a couple of months in New York, but he did that and then fell into the TV writing when some former actor friend of his was on a show called Baba Black Sheep, which later became known as Black Sheep Squadron.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the first show produced by Donald Belisario, who went on to do Quantum Leap and Magnum and Tales of the Gold Monkey and some other shows. And his friend got him an invitation to write a spec script for Tales of the Gold Monkey, which was kind of an Indiana Jones knockoff show. And he wrote a couple, they bought them, and then Don Belisario offered him the job on Magnum.
Wow.
And he wrote for that for its entire run.
That's nuts. Okay, now, what I realized is I didn't ask you earlier, did he have any songwriting experience before this album?
No formal songwriting experience at all.
Oh, my God.
And I don't mean to sound critical, because I think some of the songs are really clever.
Sure.
But I don't know if that if it really counts as songwriting.
Okay.
He wrote clever little poems and did voices and sort of hummed a melody to himself as he sang these poems. And these session musicians were really just recording these very generic tracks behind it. So, but he certainly, what he did do in the dinner theater days is oftentimes take well-known plays, Broadway plays that they were doing, and he would recut them somewhat. He might cut a line out. He might even rewrite an entire scene, either for time or for content or for just knowing that the way something played on Broadway in New York was not the way it was going to play in, say, Memphis or Charlotte or wherever we happen to be touring at the time. And so he had writing experience in that sense. And in fact, that's kind of why his actor friend told him, you can write TV scripts. I've seen you write. You can write TV scripts. And I think he put a lot of that into this album, just the composition of things, whether it's a funny little rhyme or a clever turn of story. I think really, at heart, he was a writer, and it just took a while for that to naturally emerge from him.
What was do you remember the name of the actor who made that connection?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Close family friend, a guy named Jeff McKay. And like I said, Jeff was on Black Sheep Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff was on Magnum. He played the character called Ice Pick, who was a Navy buddy. And he also played Mac. He played two characters on Magnum who were different Navy buddies of Thomas Magnum's. And, yeah, Jeff had a nice little career and was a great guy, funny, gentle, humane, really good friend of the family, and had moved to L.A. in the mid-'70s to try to make it in TV. Stayed in touch with my dad, and when things were really drying up for him, he was the one who called him and said, you have this talent. Trust me, I'm out here. I read the scripts people write for me every day. They're not good. You can do this. You can do better.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny, too, is now that I'm looking him up on IMDb, you can see how many different shows he worked on that your father also wrote on. That's great. There's also a little bit of, where did I see it? There's some Airwolf as well, which is great.
Airwolf, absolutely.
So
my dad wrote some of those. He sure did. Yep.
That's nuts. Yep. I mean, I guess it's not that crazy, but this is one of the last eras where you could I feel like be recommended on someone's word for a job and then work for, a very popular TV show for 8 years. I mean, that's